Welcome to Wellbeing Wednesdays with Harvinder Narula on BW Wellbeing World. My guest today is a trained food technologist, an eating behavior psychologist, and also an author. My conversation with her is going to be around the emotions and the science of the food choices we make. She is Dr. Kavita Bhatnagar, CEO of Kanegrade Flavors and Ingredients, and the author of the book, The Power of Imperfect Eating. Welcome to BW Wellbeing World, Dr. Kavita Bhatnagar. Welcome to Wellbeing Wednesdays with Harvinder Narula for BW Wellbeing World. My guest today is a trained food technologist, an eating behavior psychologist, and an author. My conversation with her is going to be around the emotions and the science of food choices we make. She is Dr. Kavita Bhatnagar, CEO of Kanegrade Flavors and Ingredients, and the author of a book called The Power of Imperfect Eating. So, Dr. Kavita, it's lovely to speak to you this morning on BW Wellbeing World. It's amazing work that you are doing. Let us first begin with the book that you have written. It's called The Power of Imperfect Eating. Tell me one thing, what led you to write this book? What was the motivation behind it?
Thank you, Harvinder. I think this is something that I have been asked so often. And every time I have to answer, I get into kind of an introspective mode. So the book started with a simple idea that is food just a biological act that we do? So, but I very strongly believe that eating is not a biological activity merely. It's much beyond that. It is social, it is emotional, it is cultural, it is economical, it has got so many dimensions. So, I had the privilege of approaching food from different lenses. So, I'm a food technologist, so I could appreciate the science side of food and how the processing takes place, what is the microbiology, physical aspects, and everything. And then I am a qualified nutritionist. So I was always curious how food impacts our health, what it does to our body. So, how to approach food from the lens of a nutritionist. And as I moved further in my career, I started to ask deeper questions. And I was always intrigued by how food affects our behavior, or is it the other way around? How we behave around food. So I pursued my PhD in psychology when I studied eating behaviors. So I had these three lenses. So using these composite lenses, I wanted to write something which is meaningful for people at large, people who just look at food as something like a sustenance or some other purpose that they have. So I thought, what a beauty it would be if I could kind of hold hands with them and show them food from my lens. See, this is what food is from the business point of view. See, this is food is from psychology point of view. So this book is actually the culmination of all these different ideas. And I hope this book is meaningful to people and it helps them shift their mindset about how to approach food.
Hmm. You know what? One is you've written a book, but there is a lot of information which exists on the internet, and some of this information is conflicting. So, when there are these conflicting beliefs about food and nutrition as an outcome of excessive information, I think you also mentioned this in the book. What do you think needs to change to regulate the food habits of people?
So I think food is deeply personal. And first of all, the acknowledgement of the fact that there is no perfect way to eat. So when we say there is a perfect way to eat, we are saying there is one right way to eat. But that the idea in itself is flawed because 8 billion people of earth, different circumstances, different needs, even their gut microbiota is different. So, how can there be one right way to eat? So, whatever information we get from various sources, it's important to understand that it cannot be generic. I mean, it has to have some meaning for you. So recognize that whenever you are approaching any information, just try and understand what does that information mean for you. And once you start to understand that this might not be relevant to me, then you kind of stop drowning in that information overload, because it might not mean anything for you. We are all different needs, different motivations, different circumstances, different priorities. So acknowledging a reality of life and how food and nutrition fits into our reality, once we start to take care of this belief, I mean, when this belief shifts, everything sort of starts falling in place.
Dr. Kavita, the book that you have written is quite unique in the way it has been written for the topic that it touches. I mean, typically a food related book would more focus on nutrition, recipes, etc. But this book is quite unique. Why did you choose to write it the way you did? How did you think about treating this particular topic in the manner that you have in your book?
I'm so glad, Harvinderji, you asked this question. So, interestingly, when I started writing this book, it was very sciencey. It was full of figures, full of data, full of references, research papers quoting this research, that research. But then after 2 years, I realized that this is not going to work, because data can be a starting point to change behavior, but it is truly emotions that motivate people to change. So I sort of tore all the pages, started writing again, and decided that I should leverage the art of storytelling. So this book is written in form of 23 short stories, wherein there are characters from the food industry, and with their stories, their backstories, how they approach their dilemma surrounding food, packaging, labeling. So when a reader goes through their stories, they resonate with those stories. They find a part of themselves in those pages, and that truly inspires them to approach their own food choices in their own life in a different manner. So that was the entire idea of writing it in form of the stories, because I did not want to add to the already existing way that people approach food and nutrition. They are doing a great job, fantastic job, because of course that is a starting point. But then there is no dearth of it. Internet is full of that information. But why, despite of all this information, nothing is happening. No one is changing. We know having information is one thing. We are not so I always tell people that there is not a information or a knowledge deficit. There is a behavior deficit, and how do you approach that deficit? So my book was a way in that direction.
But tell me, Dr. Kavita, that this book, when you say has characters from the industry, do they relate to any real characters who you've encountered in your life?
Yeah, so disclaimer here. So these characters are inspired by various people I
Do they
have
do they
come
know
across.
that they are being referred to?
Sorry?
Do they know that they are being referred to?
The identities have been concealed, and one character is not one actual character that exists in my real life, but then that might be a culmination of 30 different people who kind of helped color that character in a different way. I wanted to stay true to the reader, because otherwise the book would be like 10,000 pages if I would have mentioned the different characters I've come across all in my career.
I can imagine. I can imagine. So, Dr. Kavita, you used the word motivation some time back. Now, motivation, uh, you know, a lot of people get motivated listening to conversations like ours. A lot of people get motivated listening to health enthusiasts, nutritionists, etc. And I was talking to you just yesterday, and we spoke about that. You mentioned that motivation cannot be judged, but the intentions are flawed. What do you think? Despite of the best intentions of people wanting to regulate their life, regulate the food that they eat, it is an uphill task for them to maintain consistency. What is your take on this?
Yes, this is something I deeply care about, because we come across so many quotes, books full of motivational anecdotes. we have social media trying to motivate us. But I think the gap lies in sometimes in information overload or analysis paralysis. When there is a lot of motivation, you simply fail to understand where to begin, and you start try something and then want to step back and figure out, is this thing working for me or not? And by that time you get onto another idea, you latch onto it, start doing something else, experimenting with it. So before the thing starts to take roots, you kind of uproot it, see whether it is taking roots or not. And I think that's one thing, we do not stay consistent. Um, and and I mean, there is so many voices to follow, and how do you make sure which voice to follow, what is making sense to you, and is it okay if I stay consistent with this, but the friend of mine, that person is doing something else but he is doing all right, should I try that thing? So it's like more of a monkey mind kind of a thing, wherein you keep on hopping from one ideology to other, one trend to another, one fad to another. We all want to get healthy. We want to have, we all talk about longevity. So there is a lot of cognitive dissonance that happens, that we have a belief system, but our behaviors, they say otherwise. And then we start deflecting, we start telling ourselves different stories about it. We kind of sometimes even delegitimize what we are being told. So there are different defense mechanisms, as we call in psychology, that comes into play, where we are not able to hold ourselves accountable. We want to deflect the blame.
Do you think we become judgmental too soon, and we suddenly start having a lack of faith in whatever we have started, whatever we have begun?
I think so. Yes, I would agree. I would say so, because we are too impatient to see results. And that's why whatever we start, we have a hard time staying consistent with it, because we want everything yesterday. I mean, let's talk about someone struggling with the uh, weight issues, for an example. I mean, it took years for that weight to come up. Give yourself time, be kind to yourself, be compassionate towards your own self. Nothing is going to happen overnight. And unfortunately, the what we are given to understand, that we have quick fixes. 10 days, 30 days, 3 months. Now new year is approaching. So before the new year hits. So so we are impatient with ourselves. We don't give ourselves chance when it comes to ourselves.
And Dr. Kavita, when it comes to people trying to regulate the food that they eat, uh, they start trying to get and prepare diet charts, whether they go to a dietitian and require a diet chart. And sometimes we also just find a friend of ours losing weight, so they go and copy their diet chart and try to follow that same regime in their own life. How can a diet chart play a role in your life, a meaningful role in your life, and how can it be best used?
So yes, I have addressed this in my book as well. But see, diet charts can be a beautiful beginning point in understanding your dietary requirements. They are a means, not an end. So as we know that, little children, when they start to write, they are given exercises, worksheets to draw standing lines, to draw cursive, join the dots. So I look at diet charts in the similar manner. They are a starting point. They tell you what are your requirements. Sometimes people do not even have an idea how much protein they need. And even if they know that I need 60 grams of protein, say, they do not know how 60-gram protein looks like. So when you have a diet chart, you at least have an idea that, okay, this is the ideal requirements that my body needs, and then they can, from that starting point, they can build their way up. So at least they understand that these are my requirements, and some days I might be able to meet those, and there would be days where that won't be possible. So sticking to a diet chart per se is not possible, I would say, and it's not human, and it can be too harsh on ourselves. But then they can be a beautiful starting point to internalize our needs, so that we know how to move up forward from there. But if a child says, I do not want to go to the next standard, I want to keep doing these worksheets all my life, what are you going to tell them? So, in the same manner, you cannot say that I can live my life on a diet chart.
I think what you're saying is also very important, that one must first know your own body,
Yes,
know the needs of your body, and then create a diet chart which should work like a worksheet to achieve the objective and not mere following the diet chart for the sake of diet.
absolutely.
Brilliant. Dr. Kavita, in your book, you have touched upon a very important aspect, which is also gaining a lot of importance today in digital media, and which is about labels.
Yeah,
You know, when we go out, we are now very cautious about picking up foods, and before we actually buy them, read the label, what it really means. But what I have seen is that most of us, when we go there, we are conscious about picking up the food, reading the label, but we can't make sense of what that means to us.
absolutely.
So, what do you think is the best way to use this information without having the adequate training and knowledge to use it in the best way it should be?
Wonderful. I'm so happy that you brought this up. So, labels can be a starting point, and I'm really happy that in past, I would say, an year and a half or so, a lot of people have started reading labels. It wasn't the case earlier. Now people have started asking questions. At least they question that what does this mean, or something. But I'm sometimes worried that is it taking things too far? Because sometimes when we read something on the label and we do not know what to make of that information, then that can add to stress. I mean, we do not know what a particular ingredient does to us. And then I mean, that's where the social media thing also plays a huge role. We are already confused. We do not know what these ingredients mean, what these labels mean. And then someone comes and tells us that no, no, this ingredient is going to cause you cancer. This is horrible for you. So, taking labels too far can be harmful. But yes, as a consumer, I think decreasing your overall reliance on processed foods would be a good idea. On some days, you can eat uh, more home cooked meals, cooked in a responsible way that meets your body requirements. On other days, it's perfect to lean on processed food as convenience. So there is a reason processed food came into being. It is not possible to feed the entire human population if there was no processing. We cannot definitely go back to hunter gatherer days and start hunting and gathering and cooking our own food. Lives have changed. We have a fast paced life. Our needs have changed. We cannot apply the rules of the past era to this time. So use processed food as a tool in our hands to lean on some of the busy days or where our priorities are different, and to plug in the gaps that we have, sometimes for indulgence, but approach it with the reason. So I think it's important to know the why of we are eating a particular food product rather than, oh God, it contains this. No, 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 I shouldn't be eating. But you'll anyway eat it. So you'll eat it and plus be guilty of it, be scared of it. So rather than that, eat it in moderation and eat it as a part of a diversified, balanced diet and stop fretting over it.
And one more thing, Dr. Kavita, we have seen progress today is, and especially science has been progressing extensively. And many years of research has now brought us down to a point where all of it makes sense. And sometimes we also term it as understanding the genetics and genomic studies, etc. But it has led us to understand our body types and what we are predisposed to, you know. So, what do you think is the role of genomics and genetic studies in creating a personalized lifestyle? Can it and should it go beyond when you're unwell to know yourself? Or is it only for people who are now getting ill and they want to protect themselves against cancer, diabetics, etc.?
So I think that if we take anything too far, it starts to show its consequences. So, yes, genetics has a huge role to play, and I believe in epigenetics. So, the role that lifestyle has cannot be denied. It has a huge, huge role to play. And genetics is like a deck of card which has been dealt, you have been dealt with. How you play it out depends on you. So, a lot can be done by taking care of what is in our control rather than just blaming the outside circumstances or outside forces. So, yes, I'll say that it's good that we have many tools available to us today to take charge of our own health. If you have the means, you have the resources, make use of it. But make sure that you are not just outsourcing your health to these newer tools and technologies, because sometimes we say, oh, this is my genetic thing, and I can't really do anything about it, and I have been told because of my genetics I have to eat a certain diet and I have to live in a certain way. So you stop participating in life when you know about all these things. So don't take it too far, use them as a tool, but not let all those things control you.
And Dr. Kavita, I remember talking to you yesterday again, and one thing that you have also mentioned in the book, you say that the food is a love language.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate what you mean by that?
So growing up, you're fed by your parents. I mean, specifically in Indian context, the more the amount of fat and ghee and sugar, the more love people have for you. And you go to someone's house, there will not be any consideration of your appetite. If you refuse an extra chapati, either you did not like the food, or probably you are being reserved and you do not want to eat at their place. So those are, I mean, food is a love language, and how much you let that language control you, that has to be taken care of. We all have different ways to express love, so it can be a good idea to teach people that what is your love language, that kind of re-educate them. Now I'm no longer the same person, but maybe, and there are different ways to express your love. It can be an act of service, it can be words of affirmation. It doesn't have to be food, because people have seen you in a different light, and they know that, oh, this is his favorite food, so next time I meet him, I'm going to probably drown him in this favorite food. So it's a good idea to educate them. Yes, it used to be my favorite food, but now my priorities have changed, my worldview has shifted. So I think love language has a huge, huge role to play. And not only ourselves, we have to educate the people who love us also to shift their mindset towards it and towards our own choices, so that they're aligned with what choices we are making in our own life.
Got it. It's a very sweet gesture that we have in our, in our society. But when you are talking of sweets, what about people who have diabetes? I know I have diabetes and I have sugar cravings, and
Yeah.
I really want something sweet, palatable for me to consume. And a lot of people start resorting to supplements or alternative sugars, stevia, etc. People want to have Coke, but they move to have Diet Coke instead. Now, what do you have to say about the sugar alternatives that we are consuming to protect ourselves or to align and manage our diabetes?
I think science has made a lot of progress, and the safety of these additives constantly is being evaluated by global bodies. And before they are being used in any of the food product, they undergo extensive research and stuff. But science is evolving, research is evolving. So it's okay. They're a beautiful tool in our hands if we want to cut down our sugar consumption. But at the same time, do not make it a habit. Just because it does not have sugar does not entitle you to have keep on having it, because you kind of think that you're absolved of the guilt. Because let's say a person is a diabetic, and in fact I'll have to say a person is living with diabetes, because when you say I'm a diabetic and when you say I'm living with diabetes, that shifts the energy. When you say I'm living with diabetes, you can kick it off your life, so that empowers you. So if a person is living with diabetes, then they might think that I'm consuming a sugar free beverage, so I can have another one and another one. probably even if the person is adding stevia to their tea or any other artificial sweetener, they think that I'm not having sugar, so I can have 7 cups of tea, 8 cups of tea, I'm good. But I would advise that err at the side of caution, because research is evolving. We do not know what if some years down the line there is a new research which says, oh, previously safe additive is now, this is the new research reveals. Then what do you do with that information? So I think it's best to retrain your taste buds to like less sweeter things. Conditioning is a process, but it is doable. And once you start developing uh, taste for less sweeter things, it serves you in the long run.
Mhm. And Dr. Kavita, another thing that we have noticed is that from the time we had joint families, we moved to nuclear families, and now, in fact, our people are moving towards living single as well. And one of the changes when it comes to food habits is that a lot of people have been ordering out.
Yeah.
Actually, post-pandemic, there's been a huge hockey stick rise in terms of people ordering food. The belief is that home cooked food is better. But
Hmm.
like you said earlier, that the love of your parents, your caretakers, pushes them to probably create food which may not be good for you
Yeah.
in the long run. I mean, having too much of oil, having too much of sugar, etc. What do you have to say about ordering in food versus home cooked food? Is this something that you have addressed in your book as well?
Yes, I have addressed this in my book, but I will briefly like to mention that, see, it is a wise idea to objectively see what you are ordering, or even if it is home cooked food, what are the ingredients of it? There are merits and demerits of both. If you are ordering outside, but you are ordering, let's say, something of which you are aware of the calorie count, your macros, your everything, and it suits your needs that particular day, so why not? And the same time, if you are having a home cooked meal, let's say you are packing a paratha in a jar, vis-a-vis you are ordering something like a rajma or something from outside. So just compare how these two things work out. So just the label that it is homemade and it is being brought from outside, I think that doesn't make any sense. It is how that food fits into your needs, your priorities that day, and how it fits into your lifestyle. I think we need to take a broader, wider look at that.
It is kind of funny that sometimes when you are looking at the labels of the food that we buy or some of the processed foods that we buy, it says home cooked food or homemade food or handmade. And
Yeah.
it's funny that it's like, I keep laughing about it. It's a home cooked food made in a factory.
Yeah.
So, these, when we are talking about psychology of food, the psychology of food buying, I think, the companies that are selling food to us know of our psychology more than we know of our psychology on our own. you know So
Absolutely.
can you elaborate on this, this culture of buying food online? How do companies use it to grow their business, and is it morally right to do so, or is it considered, or should it be considered as an incorrect manipulation of our human psyche?
Wonderful. So I get asked this very often. In fact, in one of the chapters in my book, also, this has been a theme, that what about ethics in marketing? So there are food products which are being marketed. People have spent careers in learning about consumer behavior, and it's a major kind of investment by companies to understand the consumer behavior, the psychology, and what will make their sales grow. And when I look at it from the business side, it all makes sense to me, because that is what the incentives are, to drive sales, to increase profitability. So I think it's a shared responsibility of the regulator, of the companies, and also of the consumers. Because when the regulator has the regulations in place, then you have legal constraints about marketing. If a company is ethical, they will have their own checks and balances in place when not to take things too far. As a consumer, it is good to be aware of our own emotional magnets. So let's say I am aware that the moment I read Amritsari Chole, let's say, even if I know that has nothing to do with Amritsar now, even the recipe is not Amritsar, I know I look at Amritsari stuff and I get drawn to it. So if I'm aware, and next time when I look at the menu, if it is written Amritsari Chole, probably I'll ask five more questions. Have you added this? Have you added that? So that awareness of your own emotional magnets can do wonders for us. Now, there are people, the moment they read high protein, they'll get attracted to it. But what, how much high is high? So just be aware of your own hooks and avoid them strategically.
I think the same thing happens with things like brown bread, whole
Yeah.
wheat bread, etc. The regulation behind it, how much percentage of wheat do you need to have added to it for it to be
Mm.
called as a wheat bread? So I think we need to start educating ourselves around what is it that we are buying. But since we were talking about psychology and food psychology, I must share with you that I was speaking with Sister Shivani. I'm a
Mhm.
big fan of hers and her ideology, and she speaks about, the person who cooks your food,
Yeah.
their mindset. So, when she compares the food which has been cooked by your mother and the intent and the love behind the cooking and the effort that has gone in versus somebody who's been paid to do so, and for them it is just a job, and their mindset would be that it may not be as much of love gone in. Do you think there is some science behind it? Since you're a food technologist, somebody who studied this, I'm
Yeah.
very intrigued to ask you this question.
I'm glad you brought it up. In our culture, we are being told that Annam Brahma, food is God. So even if you visit our temples or if you visit gurdwaras, they people when they're cooking in the community kitchen in langar, they are constantly singing shabad and all that while cooking food, and that food cooked there indeed tastes different. So we have that prasad sentiment, we have all of that. Similarly, when we say that when our home cooked, mom cooked food, it is being cooked with love. I think when we say these things, there is some kind of reverence, there is some kind of a belief system, and belief shifts biology. So when you are having it with that belief, your biochemistry kind of shifts in a very subtle way. And I think that is more to do with biochemistry than to do with the, I mean, probably I do not want to deny anything that energy, the cosmic science, and all of that. But if I have to look at it from a purely scientific angle, then I think belief shifts biology. You are having something and you think it has got miraculous power, it is going to heal me. Your biochemistry is going to shift and it is going to heal you in ways that you even did not know that existed.
And interestingly, when we talk about taking care of ourselves, it is, and we talk about maintaining a lifestyle or managing our lifestyle, food is one part of it. The other part is about exercising, taking care of the physical aspect.
Yeah.
Now, with expensive gyms coming in, health food supplements that people are consuming, especially those who are going to gyms and, following a fitness regime, what is your thought on this expensive lifestyle maintenance efforts that are being put in by people?
So I think if someone can afford it, they should by any means invest in their health. If that gives them, because going to a fancy gym also has to do a lot with self identity. So if you are able to afford that lifestyle, if you think investing in your health gives you a lot of satisfaction, go ahead and do it. But make sure that you are gymming there. You are not going there just to socialize. So, yes, going to a gym, hiring a personal trainer, I mean, these are all privileges. And there is no harm in coming from a privileged background. But then what do you do with that privilege is what makes the difference. Are you able to actually stay consistent with your efforts, or it's just another flashy thing parked in your yard. So that's very important. And about supplements, sometimes you really need them, provided that you are in taking it under the guidance of a doctor or a qualified health practitioner. There is no harm. But then when we start self-medicating, when we are influenced by, oh, my buddy is taking that, oh, he lost 7 kgs, so I should also kind of take it, or someone is just peddling you these supplements. So that's where things start to crumble crumble down. So we have to be very aware of our own needs. Are we being under supervision of medical practitioner? Check their credentials, because sometimes the loudest noises cannot are not the most qualified ones. So be mindful of what you are doing, why you are doing, what is influencing you. Is it really some black and white thing, or you are being carried away by the noise? So be mindful of that.
I'm so glad that you spoke of this, Dr. Kavita, because I keep talking about this in almost every interview of ours, that be mindful of who you are listening to online.
Yeah.
You have to differentiate between experts, someone who's qualified to give you the information that you deserve to get, versus somebody who's just an enthusiast but has no qualification to push you to or influence you to do certain things. So that's a very important point, that if you are taking supplements, or if you are interested in consuming supplements, it must be under the guidance of people who are experts in being able to guide you.
Yeah,
Now,
also intentions can be flawed. I'm sorry to interrupt you, because sometimes intentions can be flawed. If someone is offering you a supplement, how do you make sure that they are not getting a kickback out of it?
correct.
So ask the right questions. And now we are lucky that we have so much of information at our fingertips. We can ask the right questions.
Also, I think there is a sense of responsibility that people need to demonstrate.
Yeah,
But because, being a consumer of anything, you know, in this case, a supplement, if it has worked for you, it does not make you an expert to start, influencing other people to start looking at it, because it may have worked for you, but it may not be the right thing for someone else, you
yeah,
know. So that's very important understanding that people must have. Now, coming back to the psychology of how we buy our foods, uh, there are different kinds of food available.
yeah,
There are also similar foods available, but packaged differently, you know. And what we as consumers typically respond to when we go and make a purchase is the packaging and the labeling,
yeah,
right? Now, this is also about psychology of the potential buyers that these sellers are playing around with. And playing around with, I'm doing it with, I'm talking with a positive sense. I mean, they
yeah.
understand that, using it for the marketing. What is the role of signaling in buying food products? I know you have touched about this in your book, but if you can just explain it for a layman as to what does this mean, and what does this, how is it important in their life?
Signaling has a huge, huge role to play. So you look at something packed in a brown craft paper bag vis-a-vis something packed in a shiny, cheap quality plastic. If you are someone who is a health enthusiast, you would be magnetically pulled towards that brown craft paper bag, and perhaps you will even not read the label, because you think that it's a sustainable packing. So probably the contents are going to be responsible too. So pay attention to the labels, to the entire contents, to the ingredients, to the nutritional information, and then you decipher whether you still want to go about it or not. Because signaling will always be there. There will be adjectives like, or sometimes there are things like, Californian. Sometimes they tell you the story of the origin, the province. Sometimes there are adjectives, um, different colors, picture graphics. There are orchards, and you automatically assume that, oh, this is talking about freshness. So this is all about psychology. So as a consumer, if we keep on reminding ourselves that let me objectively evaluate this food product rather than plainly, as they say, don't judge a book by its cover. So don't judge a food product by its label,
Package.
I mean, the packaging itself.
Yes, that is really important because we assume a lot of things, but I think the message here is to start looking at things objectively
Yeah,
and understand what you are buying. Be conscious about it.
right,
Uh,
absolutely.
Dr. Kavita, my last question to you before I let you go is, and it is important because we some of us have a mindset where we say that एक ही जिंदगी है, ऐश कर लो. You have one life, live it, and what's the point of dying when not enjoying it? So enjoy while it lasts. How do you respond to this attitude and to people who have this attitude?
Yes, so there is one entire chapter addressing that. So there is, I'll quickly tell you about how I approached this concept. So there is this guy who says, YOLO, guys, YOLO. You only live once. So eat whatever is in your visible radius, eat and make merry. Who has seen tomorrow? But then there is a doctor who gives her peace of mind, and she says that she was operating upon two people who met a car accident. One was a 30-year-old and one was an elderly gentleman. And on the operation table, the elderly gentleman made it, the other one could not because that person was a smoker, abuser, and a drinker, and I mean, there were so many comorbidities that they couldn't save that youngster. So, so the idea was that we stack the odds in our favor. We do not know what life throws at us, but at the same time, by living life in a responsible way, we are stacking the odds in our favor. We all experienced during COVID when the most vulnerable ones were people with comorbidities. So I mean, destiny is a part of the equation, but we have a lot of control upon what we do to ourselves. So I think responsible lifestyle, responsible eating, and taking a holistic view of what we are, how we are engaging with life overall, and not kind of every time zooming into food ingredients, isolating food products, and hair splitting over them, enjoying life a little bit, trying to be human most of the times and not behave like an AI bot that, I'm counting my macros, I'm doing all right. Come on, you are a human, you have to live life. So we are imperfect human beings living in an imperfect world. So let's embrace that imperfection and celebrate progress over perfection.
There's another thing that comes into our mind, and I want to delve into that. Uh, when we are talking about life and when we are talking about our food, people respond to a meaningful purpose that they have in their life. Something that pushes them to either take care of themselves or have a carefree attitude, right? What is your thought on this? How does one find a purpose which leads them to start taking care of what they consume and make a part of their body?
Wonderful. So I think purpose is what drives us. Purpose is like a compass which guides you to your true north. But if we compare it vis-a-vis a GPS tells you from how to go from one point to another. So let the purpose be your guiding force. You know that purpose will take me there. But the GPS navigates you through ups and downs of your life and tells you what to do with your life on a day-to-day basis. So let that purpose guide you. But at the same time, it's unfair to be irresponsible to yourself and to your loved ones. Because when we are being too careless about our lifestyle, we are not only harming or destructing, or I would rather go to say destroying our own selves, but our entire lives. I have seen families crumble because of lifestyle diseases. I've seen because when there is diabetes, there is hypertension, eventually there is chronic renal failure, there are liver diseases, and then the entire families, their energies, their financial resources, everything is diverted towards taking care of that one person. then where does your purpose go? When you are not being responsible, you are not being responsible of your own choices, about your life, about the life of your loved ones. And I mean, then you are having again a cognitive dissonance. You want to fulfill your purpose, but you're forgetting that what you are doing on an everyday basis. What are you doing with the micro choices? What you are going to do with the next 10 minutes? Are you going to sit here and stuff food irresponsibly in your mouth, or are you going to next 10 minutes actively? Because it is the micro choices that are going to define how you live your twilight years.
Absolutely. I mean, we must acknowledge that if we have a purpose, then we also have a role to fulfill that purpose.
Absolutely.
We should be mindful of the role that we play consciously in order to achieve what we set out to achieve. It's been a beautiful conversation and a few points that have kind of stayed on with me. And one is, it was very beautiful when you said that eating food is a biological need, but it's an emotional activity,
Yeah,
you know, and
agree.
then we must also understand that there is no one right way to eat. And we must keep in mind that every body is different and responds differently to the same food, which means that we need to be conscious about what we eat after knowing ourselves really well.
Yes.
And, another very powerful thing that you had said during this conversation was that uh, if I remember correctly, it was about there is knowledge overdose, but there's a behavioral deficit.
Yeah.
That I think was a very, very powerful statement that you made. And then, what also stayed on with me is the understanding of how we use the diet charts,
Yeah.
of how we see it as a worksheet which has been prepared after knowing your body, giving you action points of what you should be doing so that you make the best of the diet chart, which is specific for your needs.
Yeah.
And last but not the least, you know, a very powerful statement that you made when we were talking to the conversation that I had had with Sister Shivani is that understanding the science of food psychology, and the epitome of that is that belief shifts biology, and that is what
Indeed.
we experience when we eat langar or prasad.
Yeah.
There's much more than the ingredients that we see that have gone into what we eat and that we can emotionally feel when we are consuming that food from that environment. So I think these were some of the really powerful points that emerged from this conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your nuggets with us. Thank you for putting this book together. For anybody who reads this book, they will transform the way they will see the food that they consume and see buy the food with a very different perspective, knowing consciously what they are getting into. So thank you so much for your time and thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Harbinder. It's been a true privilege to be here.